My name's Gary Exner. I'm a past president of the Oregon Electric Vehicle Association, and I've been doing electric vehicle outreach for about the last 10 years. And so I have the obligatory disclaimer on here. I am not a tax professional. Do not construe anything I'm telling you as tax advice. You're on your own. Talk to a tax professional. I'm here to help you kind of navigate some of the rules that are in place, as I've been talking to people about this for a long time. It's a complicated subject. I'm not going to go into extreme detail on deep dive behind all the different restrictions and stuff, but it'll give people a chance to help navigate the waters on incentives and how they're applied and what's available. So first I'm going to go ahead and this is my introduction portion, and then we'll talk about new vehicle incentives, both state and federal, and then we'll go on how leasing can be utilized as a tool for people that otherwise would not be able to qualify, or vehicles that would not otherwise be able to qualify. And then we'll talk a little bit about used vehicle incentives, and then I'll open it up for some Q&A. And so this is kind of, I guess I already kind of did that, but if people are interested, is you can contact the OEVA, ask@oeva.org, and I'm perfectly happy to do a more in-depth seminar that goes into greater detail on the tax code and what's behind it, and how some of the background on this goes. And also, you know, I have some insight into Oregon's program, currently suspended due to lack of funding, and I know a little bit about Washington's. So for new vehicles in Oregon, you know, we'll talk about state incentives first. Oregon has or had an Oregon Clean Vehicle Rebate Program, oversubscribed, out of money, suspended. You know, so that's the current status. They will get a limited amount of funding, is built into the legislation that will start on January 1st. And I'm anticipating that will last for a very short window. They have a backlog of some things that they have a waiting list for people that purchased vehicles last year that they ran out of funding that they will fill first, and then they will go into taking new subscriptions on that. Details on that are not out yet. I'm imagining that it will be a reduced amount from previous years. Built into the legislation is a minimum and a maximum amount. They were running at the max in previous years, and I suspect that they'll drop that to the minimum to spread the love of as many people as they possibly can that are buying EVs. And like I said, I'm just guessing on that. I actually did have a seat on the advisory committee to the DEQ on help develop the original rules. And for low to moderate income people, there's an additional $5,000, what's known as a charge ahead rebate, that's available on both new and used. So on new vehicles, you could potentially get theoretically up to $7,500. I'm imagining that will be about $6,500 next year for a very short window, probably just January. 4 to 6 weeks is my best guess, based on the volume, unless the legislature provides more funding, which they're asking for, but who knows what they're actually going to do. Anybody here from Washington that wants to talk a little bit about the sales tax exemption? So Washington's is a little complicated. So there's a price limitation on the vehicle, and their incentive is not a rebate. It's not a tax credit. You just do not have to pay all of the sales tax. So the sales price of the vehicle or your total lease payments have to be under $45,000. And then you will not pay the state portion of the sales tax on the first $15,000 of that. And so how that's, I don't know, leasing or purchase, it gets complicated. So a dealership should help you navigate, and they also do publish that number. There's not as much information on the web as in some states, but they have that number listed to call with any questions. So that's, you know, what you want to do. So the way it's structured is if you buy a car for $45,000, if you're trading in, it doesn't reduce that price point, and so it has to be under $45,000. And that's the actual purchase price of the vehicle, and, you know, with all accessories and everything. And we can do a Q&A afterwards on anything specific that you have. Federal incentive on new purchases. There's basically, most people are familiar with the rules for what's known as 30D, which is an individual filing. That's the way all purchases were done prior to the passage of the IRA. And one of the things that's very, very important to anybody that's looking to claim that credit on a qualified vehicle is the dealer must provide you at the time of sale a statement of what you qualify for, VIN number, transaction details, and they have to attest under penalty of perjury that you are entitled to that. That's the same information that they will be providing to the IRS. In past years, it's like somebody claims a credit and only if you were audited did they check. They put provisions in place this year that it will be VIN referenced, and if the dealer does not provide the correct information by the deadline and you file, you will be declined on that. And this piece of paper is going to be your backup to say, yes, I did buy it, and here's the proof, and they attested that I was qualified for that. And so that's probably the most important thing to take away on this is if you do purchase a vehicle, the dealership or manufacturer, if you're directly from the manufacturer, needs to be providing this to you at the time of sale. Up to $7,500 is available. It's divided into a couple of different categories to get there. And so there's also an MSRP cap on the vehicle. It is $55,000 on sedans, station wagons, anything that's not an SUV or a pickup or a van. Those have an $80,000 cap. That is not a base MSRP. That is the MSRP on the sticker of the actual vehicle you purchase. And that will include all accessories installed at the port, but not dealer installed accessories like floor mats and things like that. So it's, and once again, that's why it's important to go back to the dealer must provide you with that piece of paper saying that you qualify and attesting under penalty of perjury that it does so. There's final assembly requirements too. The final assembly point of the vehicle must be in North America. And the amount of the $7,500 is divided in half on the sourcing of the critical minerals and battery components. The minimum percentage of those ramp up over the years, starting at 40 and 50% and going up 10% a year. And starting next year, there's also a provision in is even if 99% of the battery came from the US, if 1% any component in that battery comes from an entity of concern, it's no longer allowed. The expansion of the expansion of the tax credit with the IRA severely restricted it, and seems to be more intent on bringing production to the U.S. Seems to be having that effect. We're hearing announcements all the time of battery factories and people doing assembly in the U.S. And it's, I guess that's not showing completely. Starting in 2024, it will be available as a point of sale. Theoretically, the dealership has to sign up for the program to become a participant, and how that's going to work is they'll take it right off the price of the car, and it basically removes, if you file for yourself, it's what's known as a non-refundable tax credit. In that if you only had, say, $6,000 as a tax liability, that's all you would get. The other $1,500 would go away. That non-refundable portion, it's not then tied to your tax liability for the year. It is now, if you do it as point of sale, they basically waive that requirement. However, if you do claim that and then you're over the income cap, is you will need to repay that at the time of filing. Even if you're over by $1, there's no graduated scale. So it's, I'm not going to try and go into all the different levels for how you're filing and things like that, but those kinds of things are important to know. Commercial and fleet sales are not subject to the restrictions under 30D, which is the final assembly, MSRP, obviously there's no income cap on companies, and battery sourcing. So any EV can be qualifies for the credit under commercial fleet sales. If you are leasing a vehicle, the leasing company is actually purchasing that vehicle as the titled owner. So they do qualify under the commercial fleet sales, so the restrictions on that you see over here do not apply. And so any EV can be leased and receive the federal tax credit. It goes to the leasing company. And so, leasing companies will pass that on, usually in different forms. So we'll discuss a little bit of that later. So basically is they can pass it on in a couple of different ways. People usually ask for it as a cap cost reduction, reducing the capitalized cost of the vehicle. So it's basically taking it off the MSRP and lowering your payments. That's advantageous only if you're looking to purchase the vehicle at the end of the lease. Otherwise, you don't really care. The disadvantage of that is in states with sales taxes, is that becomes a taxed incentive. So it becomes a taxable portion of your sale. Oregon has no sales tax, so the majority of those, but those in Washington or California, that $7,500 that they're giving you, you have to pay tax on at the current tax rate. And there's also, so like I said, if you're looking at just leasing the vehicle, there's different things that can be advantageous. Most have gone to a more transparent. Here's the tax credit listed is right off of the purchase price of the car. And there's some misconception out there that the IRA, this is a new loophole, but like I said, it has always gone to the leasing company and they've always passed it on in these two forms. Usually, I mean, it's up to the company whether they keep it or not, but quite often you'd see even some of it as part of it is a cap cost reduction, part of it is a lower money factor, and part of it is artificially raising the residual. All those reduce the amount that you wind up paying for the vehicle and lower your payments, but the implications only really kick into effect is if it's not a cap cost reduction, if they use it to raise the residual, then your contract with the leasing company, the option to purchase, if it's offered, Tesla doesn't currently, would be at above market value, and so you're almost obligated to turn that back in. Used vehicle incentives. In Oregon, once again, currently suspended, and it would be the charge ahead rebate. So it is or was a $5,000 rebate. 20% of all funds that are given out must be by charge ahead in the Oregon program. And it is income restricted, must be from an authorized dealer, no private party sales allowed on this. And the household income is limited to 400% of the federal policy level for the household size in which you reside. If you Google Oregon EV rebate, they have a calculator online that will tell you whether you qualify or not. Once again, I expect this program to be available for a short time at the first of the year. And hopefully the legislature provides more funding over the years and gets you more. And you can also do that as a point of sale at a dealer. That's relatively new. They got that in place just before they ran out of money last time. And what that allows you to do is get pre-authorized. And instead of having, if you're looking at a used vehicle and you're counting on that charge ahead rebate, instead of having to float that $5,000 until you got a check back, you can now, if you're pre-authorized, you'll have a voucher you can take to the dealer and they will take it right off the price of the car. It's just like handing them a check. And so that's a great improvement to the program. Washington, the similar sales tax exemption, except for the total price of the car, is now $30K. And it's $16K of the sales price exempt instead of $15. That's the best that I could interpret what the information available on the web currently. And so other than that, same thing on that. Federal incentive on used purchases is going to be a similar. It's going to be up to $4,000 available, 30% of the sales price, and a maximum purchase price of the vehicle is $25,000. It's also subject to income caps that are lower than those in place for new vehicle purchases. You cannot be the original owner. You cannot sell it to yourself and claim the tax credit. And there's a kind of a strategy that's coming into place that the IRS has not issued guidance on it yet. But it appears by consensus that if you are leasing a vehicle and want to purchase it at lease end, you should be able to qualify. Like I said, this is kind of a gray area. Since the leasing company was the original owner and you're just renting it, you may have been a registered owner on a leased vehicle, but you were never the legal owner of that. So therefore, you are not the original owner and should be able to at the end, if your residual and buyout is less than $25,000 and your income falls within the limits, you could possibly be able to claim that. you get the benefit of a $7,500 up front, which if you have a leased vehicle now, you most likely did, and then get another $4,000 when you purchase it off lease. That's like I said, that's a gray area. Proceed with caution and watch for any guidance that comes out for the IRS on that strategy. And this is the same type of thing. Is this will become point of sale available, if a dealer is participating on that. They just announced last week, and full details aren't on that point of sale program, but that will take effect January 1st of 2024. Point of sale becomes theoretically possible. And like I said, I wanted to kind of keep this short and open up for Q&A, and I'll do the best of my ability. But like I said before, the expansion of the federal tax credit was a nice media coverage on it. I kind of have seen the opposite. So I'll go ahead and open it up for any questions that anybody has.
What are the income caps?
I don't have them all memorized, but on you're talking new vehicle purchase. It's $150,000 modified adjusted gross income for a single filer, $300 modified adjusted gross income for married, and I think it's $250 for head of household. I'm not entirely sure on that one, but it is $150 and $300. And modified adjusted gross income is defined by the IRS as your adjusted gross income, but then they add some certain things back in that normally wouldn't be considered for tax liability purposes. And this is where, like I said, this is where I'm not going to give tax advice. This is where I tell you to talk to your tax professional on exactly what that means for your individual circumstance. Anybody else have a question? I'm surprised. Either I did a really good job.
You did a great job, Gary.
So, like I said, as I've been around doing this, and I can try and talk to people on terms they can relate to as far as this goes, and like I said, as I've delved deep into this, and I've been involved with Oregon's incentive program for a while, so I've seen some of the politics that goes on behind putting this together. It's ideally it would be a little bit more consumer friendly, but they're from the government and they're here to help, right?
Just one additional question.
Sure.
Expect that to stay the same for 2024, the caps?
Yeah, there is no graduated, there's no elevator, no cost of living adjustment, nothing built into the legislation.
So you expect it to be the same?
It will be the same unless Congress passes something that changes it. That's what this is not, this is something that's done by Congress. It's not something that, the president or the IRS or anybody gets to do. So this is legislation passed by Congress.
So I was kind of surprised to see that the used cars had to be through dealers, which most of the time, a lot of times used cars are.
I know. And if it's not, the thing is they have recourse against dealers, so
Right.
that the dealer has to have a dealer's license and register with the federal government to be able to be a participant in the program. So there will be dealers that will probably perform a service for you.
Right. Oh, I see.
Is if you want to sell your car to me, for instance, is you could go to a dealer and he could buy it, sell it to me at a pre-negotiated price, and
So then that makes it.
and he'd make a little, and
Okay.
he or she or whatever, and so like I said, this is the kind of thing is you can. It's hard to write legislation to cover all bases, so that's what they came up with, and so and I can see state of Oregon also, so it's both federal and state must be done through a dealer.
Gotcha.
So the federal and the state is added. So there's federal and then the state is on top of that?
Yep, when the state is available.
So I have kind of a theoretical question, just to kind of play with it.
Sure.
What's the highest, most valuable electric car that you could buy that fits under all this, and you would buy in December versus what would you buy in January 2024?
There's going to.
Like,
In December, there's no.
deal?
In December, there is no state incentive available.
Right.
In January, there may or may not be.
Depending on how
I'm
fast.
assuming Oregon here. Washington's program is in place. So theoretically, the most expensive vehicle would be one that came in at exactly $80,000 MSRP, including color, wheels, all that. And I know Tesla, now like things like self-driving and things become dealer installed options. So those don't count towards the MSRP cap.
The FSD does not?
My understanding, that's a question for the Tesla folks. My understanding is the Tesla is not listed as a port installed option anymore. It is dealer installed, so therefore it does not count towards the MSRP cap.
So, and if you bought in January or you bought in December, you would fill out the state form, get in the wait list, and then.
There is no wait list on the state form.
They closed it.
They closed it, they suspended it. Plus, the state has to have a vehicle with a base MSRP less than $50,000. And so that.
For a truck and an SUV?
Yes. So there has to be a model actually available for sale. So the 3 and the Y qualify. Even if the actual car you buy is over $50,000, as long as a version of that vehicle is available for less than $50,000, then all of them qualify. I had a problem with that when I was sitting on the committee and say the Lightning came out, and so it had a base of 40,000, but you could also buy one for 98, and they all qualified. And I'm like, was this the intent of the legislature? And they said, we can't interpret intent, we can interpret how the law is written. And so that's basically it. And also for a while, Tesla had run through a EPA Model Y that was under 50 that they weren't selling. And so all Model Ys were qualified and ate up a lot of the rebate money from Oregon, like 30% of it, when you couldn't actually buy a vehicle for under 50, but there was on paper one that existed for under 50.
And this is only Oregon, not feds?
This is strictly Oregon.
Okay.
So that's where it gets complicated when you're stacking rebates. So.
Okay.
So if you are thinking in Oregon, it's just watch the inside.
Well, but if you're looking at, like I said, if you're depending on the vehicle, is there a specific vehicle you have in mind?
Yeah, like if it was going to be a Y.
So if it was a
qualify for Oregon.
Yeah, if it was a Y, theoretically is on January 1st it would be my guess you'd get an additional $1,500 from the state of Oregon towards that purchase. Guessing.
No, it's a total guess.
Came in late, but I don't know if you talked about the city of Portland is talking about rebates for electric cars.
City of Portland, I don't know anything about. I don't believe there's a program in place right now. I think what I've heard is they're more promoting charging than the actual vehicles themselves, but I could be wrong on that. Their charging equipment, there's also some incentives and rebates out there, but that's kind of a different story. I didn't try and complicate things further by adding those in. But my advice always to anybody that's looking at an electric vehicle is contact your utility company for programs around charging and any rebates on equipment and installation that may be available. PG has quite a good one. As part of the OEVA, as they invited this into their rebate program. And it's a pilot program that for delayed charging and managing the charging. So they invited us to be a soft rollout, and so I was customer number 1 on PGE's program, and I then became customer number 932 or something like that when we got our second qualified charger installed in our garage. We have 2 EVs. And between PG's rebate and the federal tax incentive that was available at the time, they were basically free. We could certainly get by with one, but it's having 2 and not having to move the cable back and forth. And I also personally like the redundancy. It's an appliance, and sometimes appliances break. And yes, both of them have level 1 or even level 2 charge cords that could be utilized, but having a couple in the garage is peace of mind for me.
So what was the rebate for that?
PG's program is $500 towards the cost, and they also, if you need to upgrade your panel, they'll go $1,000 towards that.
Wow.
And so there's a limited amount of equipment that's available for that, and it's actually should probably be categorized as V1G. V2G is more bidirectional. V1G is they're able to control your charging, and that's the pilot program. Is what they're doing is every night, it varies, they have 2 pools, but every night at 10 o'clock they either stop or slow the charging and then it resumes. So they ask to keep you plugged in, and so they're gathering data on how people charge their electric vehicles and being able to control that to make it better for the grid. Vehicle to the grid is the next step, and I'm getting off in a completely different subject here, but so for the utilities to keep a flat line, that's their goal, is demand to be a dead flat line. Never completely achievable, but the closer they can get to that, the more better it is for the utility. So a lot of times now you're doing delayed things or the peak times and the peak events, they're asked not to charge. The next step of that with an electric vehicle is if you could borrow 2 to 5 kilowatt hours from that vehicle, probably 2 kilowatt hours between 5 and 9 p.m. is the most anybody will use, even with AC and starting your cooking and thing, is if you can use your battery and not pull from the grid during that period and then recharge during low demand. That's where we're going to get with the grid. That's the ideal that gets us closest to the flat line on grid demand as possible.
What's the unit?
I have charge points. They have charge points, NLX, Juicebox, and Flow units were the last ones. And so they have to work with the utility to be able to talk to them and control the charging. And so I talked to the head of that program at an event last week, an outreach event, and they were working on incorporating, they're reaching out to Tesla to see if it's possible to get the new combo charger into that system. That ball's in Tesla's court. If they don't want to play, there's nothing PGE can do. Is they have to open access to it and allow them, data and controlling the charging.
I hope it works.
Any other tax-related questions? We've kind of gotten off on
A little bit on that one.
and you can fairly easily find the actual limits and how they define modified adjusted gross income. But I know for single it's 150, and married filing jointly it's 300.
It's different for the state, sounds like.
The state, yeah, is
If it's available.
if it's available, it is a different set of criteria, and for the standard rebate there is no income limit. But it's only the charge ahead rebate, the boosted, and so a lot of retired people do fall under that. My father took advantage of that when he got his first EV. So he was, at that point it wasn't 5,000, it was 2,500. So he got, and that was before there was point of sale. So he leased his car. The 7,500 was taken into account, but he filed and got the $2,500 check from the state about 3 to 4 months later. And the question of how much income does he have, it's like, how much do I need this year?
So I was surprised that you couldn't use that 7,500, like if you only owed $200 in taxes.
Well,
The rest of it's gonna go away.
yeah, and it's not how much you have to write a check for at the end of the year. It's your tax liability for the year. So most people that are buying, some people have low income but money, but most people is they do have income that are buying it. So it's a little bit of an unusual situation if somebody's buying a relatively expensive EV, but the low end of the market, certainly that was always the case. And so the point of sale provision on that is going to take that out of the equation. So it doesn't, the tax liability question goes away completely for dealers that do sign up with the program. That was just announced a week ago, and I have no idea what participation level is going to be. Federal government is promising the dealers payment within 72 hours.
Oh, really? Wow.
So we'll see. Dealers are hesitant to say, "Oh yeah, the government's going to send me a check later."
Yeah, that would be a tough one.
Good, and I'll come back and do this again at 3.